Welcome to another wonderful episode of Success Innovation. This episode is a live panel session that was recorded. We titled it Lift Others as You Rise, Engagement in Shpe. It was a live panel session discussion with several individuals, with four wonderful individuals, which included Leo Soto from Boeing, Jennifer de Avila from California State University at Northridge, Miguel Cuen from Arizona State University, Bartholomew Perez from Northrop Grumman. Welcome to those individuals. And the beginning of the panel started with a couple icebreaker questions.
Got through all those recruiters. Now I'm gonna dance it off. So.
Okay, awesome. What about you, Bartholomew?
It'd have to be the first time that I'd meet the clubs during Cal State Northridge, my undergrad there. The time I was recruited, and I say that because had that moment not even happened, who knows if I would have ended up joining Shpe, and probably at a later time, right? But it was very critical to that path and how the development for myself within Shpe. So I'm always forever grateful for that first moment.
That's a wonderful memory there that you would definitely go back and relive. Yeah, that's for sure. And we're going to go over to Miguel Cuen from Arizona. What's the moment from Shpe in your memory that you would like to go back and relive?
If I could relive it, it would be my first NILA for sure. It was a completely different experience where you don't know anybody. Everybody is kind of in the sense of everybody wants to network, and it was extremely out of my comfort zone. Felt so alive.
So for those that are in the audience and don't know what NILA is, can you share with us what that is?
Yeah, it's essentially a boot camp conference for chapter leaders, basically training you on best practices, how to grow your chapter, retain, etc. But only a few people from your chapter can attend the in-person ones, at least. So it's a completely different experience where you'll see people from New York, if you're in California, over to Florida, and yeah, it's a great networking experience.
Right. And we're gonna go to Leo. What is the moment in the Shpe history that you've been involved with that you would like to go back and relive?
For me, it would have to be my very first Shpe convention back in 2007. It was the first time I've seen that many thousands of engineers and companies looking for us all. So that to me was like mind blowing. I'm just a kid from the city in Jersey, to see all that actually exist definitely changed my perspective of what it is to be an engineer and a professional. So that was a great moment for me that I'd like to go back and like feel again.
Yeah, for sure. You know, going to your first national conference, regardless of when it actually happened, I'm pretty sure that now it's more impactful for those students. But it is an impactful moment when you walk in and you see a room full of Latinos or underrepresented minorities, and you see that they're there because they care about engineering, and you see companies that are there to cater to you guys, to us essentially, and they're looking to hire people off of that, and that mind, your mind starts spinning and going like, oh geez, this is an interesting moment in my life. So that's something that's definitely worth going back and reliving. What is your favorite Shpe event that you've actually had? And this one I'm going to go over to Miguel Cuen.
First Shpe event, yes. I would say Noche de Ciencias. For me, that's what really sealed it in. Basically an event where you teach K through 12 students about STEM, go through a bunch of trials. And for me, it was the biggest impact I've seen in Shpe, where you could really teach students about engineering when they didn't know they could pursue those careers.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's fantastic. The outreach is really cool. What about you, Jennifer? Your favorite Shpe event that you look for every time?
Shpetinas.
Oh, awesome. Yes. Okay. I see the shirt. Yes. Yeah. Shpetinas. Yeah. Shpetinas it's kind of like a subset of Shpe, but it's mainly for females. It's not necessarily excluding the males, but it's highlighting the female aspect of Shpes. Can you kind of talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's normally a panel of female engineers, and why I always look for this event is because I always leave feeling very empowering, and you can have a authentic conversation with them. All the questions, like what it's like to work in a male-dominated industry, it's just a very safe place to get those questions answered.
Right. Yeah. Fantastic. What about you, Leo? Your favorite ship event?
My favorite ship event, especially going back to being a student, was NELA. Just you meet people all over the country, like top-notch leaders everywhere,
Right.
and you get exposed to different things that you would otherwise not be exposed to in terms of development and being a leader or a professional. So, for me, NELA is like the staple event for leadership development, and I would repeat it every year if I could.
Wow. Yeah. That's a really awesome event to look forward to every year as well. What about you, Bartholomew?
So it has to be the national conference, but if it had to have a prerequisite, it would definitely have to be NELA. That's really where you start developing those skill sets to, one, be an empowered leader and also know how to engage others, which are very useful skills once you arrive at the national conference. So NELA, when I first attended, I remember that being a benchmark and really that platform to elevate to the next level as a ship leader.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. As you can see and hear from the panelists, the organization of SHIP has evolved since 1973 to become such a well-oiled running machine that it has a lot to offer as far as development, professional development, that it has a lot of networking aspects to it, that it has a lot of leadership building skills, that it has a lot of camaraderie to it. And it's very inclusive, and it's always trying to think and innovate. And we have the birth of Shipetinas, which falls under the umbrella of SHIP, but it's, there was a need for helping the female aspect of the SHIP familia, and that's where Shipetinas kind of came about, and that's where it's still going for. So that is really cool to hear from all of you guys, and thank you for sharing those moments. We're here to talk about engagement in our SHIP chapters as students, and not only that, but engagement in the professional aspect. Once the students from each chapter actually manage to obtain a job and have that mindset of I've already made it and I'm going with it, why do we see some students and some professionals as that not come back to help that organization where they actually started, that supported them through their college years, that allowed them to get an internship, that supported them through the development portion of it? Why do you guys think why do you guys think that is something that is happening and that we're seeing still? And I'm gonna go with Jennifer on this one.
Okay. I can speak for student chapter level. When we try to engage graduates into activities, I know a lot of it has to do with their working during the daytime and taking classes at night. So a lot of the meetings kind of conflict with their classes at night. That's one of the biggest hurdles that I've seen. And another would be, what do we have to offer the graduates or to the professionals as a student chapter? What can we do to bring them in? So working with the presidents of the student chapter to kind of see what they would like I think is key. And obviously each school would be different.
Yeah, that's something. What do we have to offer? So
Mhm.
that's a very interesting key point that you bring. So I think that every professional chapter should actually work and market really well what they can offer for the students in the graduate sector as well as the young professionals in order for them to come back. But I want it to go beyond that. And I want the young professionals that actually benefit from, the internship, the conventions, the conferences, to not think of what is in it for me, but to think of how can I give back? I think that's the whole mindset. How do we change that mindset? So, do you have anything to share with us there, Bartholomew?
Sure. I think, well, first of all, these are the sort of milestones that we want for our membership to be able to achieve, to have that full-time and internship. So kudos for them to prioritize their own values and their own priorities. So like you're mentioning, the reminder of, okay, well, when you were in SHIP, the whole aspect was the development and the giving back and community involvement and scholarship. So it might be a shortcoming on our end as leaders on reaching out and not engaging enough. So I think that's where we fall for our responsibility, and we should hold ourselves accountable to that. But I think for those that do manage to get employed full-time the day after, that's, I think, for some of us, could be like the American dream. I know it was for me. The day after I graduated, I had a job to go into, and I was forever grateful for that. Stability was a big, important factor growing up, and I was able to achieve that.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned the American dream. I think that every college student and all SHIP members are shooting for getting a job that's well paid, that you can actually make a living of. But I think part of getting a job is, and on also losing that engagement in SHIP, is because if you belong to a student chapter and then you get a job somewhere else in a different region in the nation, then you have to go, and it's an adaptation portion, and you feel lost because you don't know anybody, you don't know the city, you don't know exactly what you're doing, trying to adjust yourself to that city, into that new job role. And on top of that, I think that, okay, well, how do you reach out and engage to individuals in a city that you don't know? I think that's something that depends on each individual to actually seek that SHIP chapter if they really want to continue belonging to SHIP and to providing to. But as a professional chapter, how do we bring back individuals to be participants of SHIP and to actually engage? And this question's for Leo.
Hi, thanks. Well, the first thing, obviously, you hit a key point. A lot of it is awareness of what is available. I graduated in New Jersey, but then I moved to Los Angeles. Utilizing my knowledge of SHIP and being able to get in touch with professionals out here was what I first thought of, but not everybody knows the mediums or the routes they have to go to communicate to a professional chapter in a new area. The second thing that was touched on earlier was just, what's the return on investment for a professional? As students, we all have that end goal in mind. We want to graduate and have a career. And unfortunately, lots of times, once we hit that goal, we kind of go on cruise control, and we don't realize that, hey, now that I'm an entry-level employee, if I'm an entry-level and I want to get to X, Y, Z, whether that be a manager, vice president, CEO, a lot of times people don't realize staying involved with SHIP as a professional will help you enhance those skill sets that will help you get to those levels. So we have to do a better job of making our awareness available in terms of what resources we have to offer. And geographically, we have to be able to know where our members are so we can offer them the same value in Los Angeles that they would get in Florida, Texas, everywhere else, from a student level all the way to a professional, whether you're entry level, all the way to mid-career and beyond. So we have to be able to offer those opportunities and make our membership aware that they are available and easily accessible.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Miguel? Because you're at that point where you're kind of a senior and you're almost out of school. Essentially, you're still pursuing a master's portion of it or part of it, but you're ready to become a professional for the most part. How do you see yourself at this point, and how do you see others that are at the same similar point? How would you talk about engagement at that exact moment?
For engagement, I think it's very much on the person. I think SHIP's really, it's going to be however you see it. So if you see it only as an organization where you get a job, that's all it's going to be to you. If you see it as a familia, if you see it as sort of like where your friends and family are, that's what it's going to be. So I think instilling that culture is really important. I mean, looking around at the professionals who are extremely active, they love the organization. They have so many friends, and they're here because of not only they want to benefit and give back, but it's also a different experience as well. Seeing students who don't come back, I typically ask them when I see them kind of years later, like, hey, quick question, why didn't you stick around with the organization? And it's always because they didn't connect with the people. it's always the environment. So I think instilling that culture of seeing it as a familia, not simply just career advancement, because it's really difficult to compete with the resources of a company. I think it's more of kind of doubling down on that.
Yes, right. Yeah, just having that mindset of what do I want to see this organization as? Do I just want to see it as a springboard to get a job, or do I want to see it as a lifelong family type of network, professional network in that aspect? That's a really good spin on that. I want to ask all of you. We have actually been involved in SHIP for some couple years, for others a little more. So I want to ask the panelists, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned as a SHIP leader so far? And this one goes out to Bartholomew.
I think it's one that I get reminded of every day, that we're both the mentor and the mentee. And at any given time, the engagement and that connection, we're really held accountable, because there's a lot of people watching us, whether we know it or not. And sometimes it's people that admire what it is we're doing from a career standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, from a development standpoint. And because of that, now we have an added responsibility. But reminder of being both the mentor and the mentee, I think that's a great lesson. It has been for me. It's one that I'm proud to hold, and it's something that I'm always willing and wanting to develop even more.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. What about you, Jennifer? What's the biggest lesson as a SHIP leader that you've learned?
Definitely the lift as you rise. I would hear that all throughout conferences, and me and my friends even say it back and forth. But I think for me, the greatest lesson SHIP has given me is representation. Like seeing someone that looks like me, pursuing a STEM degree, it was pretty huge. And I know going through high school, I didn't see that. So.
You mentioned a key point, the lift as you rise. It's a statement. You can say it easily, but it's so hard to do sometimes, because we're all human. And I'm saying because we're all humans. It's like, you're essentially, you fall into this trap of we're competing in the class, and I have to get the best grade, and I have to have the best GPA. And, if I help that other individual, they're going to do just as well as me. And I don't want to fall into that. So lift as you rise is bring the others up along the path that you're going. So once again, that statement is really powerful, but it's so hard to pursue and to follow all the time. Because if you're going to the convention, there's Latinos there, and you're competing with 10,000 students that are looking for jobs, and jobs that, you are also targeting companies. And off of those, if they get it, that means that somebody's not going to get it. It could possibly well be you, right? So how do you change that mindset? I think that's something that we have to see. How do we actually tackle the lift others as you rise, and come with our own understanding of how do we actually do that? How do we achieve that in a personal level, in a professional level, at the community level? So that is something that is easily stated, but it's really hard to follow. So what about you, Leo? There, what do you think about, what's the biggest leadership skill that you've learned through SHIP?
Key point is communication. You have to be always willing to listen empathetically to others and be able to communicate in a manner that's always beneficial to both sides. Whether you agree or disagree with somebody, you have to be able to communicate that in an efficient manner that's effective for both sides. No matter my position, whether from a student all the way to a professional now to the regional team, I've always learned communication is key. Make yourself available, make yourself approachable, and just make sure that no matter who the member is who needs your help, whether it's mentee, mentor, that you're available at any all times by any means of communication, and make sure the communication is always mutually beneficial in both sides.
Okay. What about you, Miguel? What's the biggest lesson you've learned so far? We had a conversation, you kind of told me about how it was going from a student chapter to the national level. So
yeah, I'll switch it up this time. Probably it's going to be you can learn from anybody and anything. Before Shpe, I used to think that you could only learn from the older people. So I was typically asking a lot of professionals questions. And it hit me, I think, about earlier last year, where I took on a few mentees, and just seeing them, from them asking me questions, I realized a few things that I was like, oh my God, they could teach me a lot as well, kind of indirectly. Just seeing the energy that they had is something that I missed. You know, sometimes you get burnt out, things like that. But no, I think it's learning from everywhere, every situation, and anybody.
Right. No, that's totally true. Definitely. You can always learn from the younger individuals as well as the more seasoned individuals. That is correct. I want to ask a question about, you know, we've all been involved in Shpe to a certain extent for various numbers of years. And I want to know from each one of you, who has influenced you in Shpe the most? And this one goes, I want to start with Jennifer on this one.
It would definitely be my first chapter advisor. Just putting me in a leadership position where I didn't initially feel that I was ready for, kind of sparked the whole Shpe leadership journey. And I look up to her because she was very empathetic, and would listen to all of the drama that goes along with leadership. So I definitely look up to her, and I probably wouldn't have had that type of mentor if I wasn't part of Shpe.
I see. Okay. What about you, Miguel?
The person I learned the most is from definitely the first person I actually met in Shpe. His name's Andrew Alonzo. He's a professional at Boeing. And when he recruited me, he was pretty much the first person to tell me that I could run for positions, that I could be a leader. And I was just a freshman at the time. He actually turned out to be sort of a mentor throughout the years. He still is. And yeah, I learned so much from him when it comes to leadership, career advice, all across the board.
Okay, thank you. Do you happen to know that person there, Leo, because he works at Boeing? Or, I mean, I'm not, Boeing's so big, but
yeah,
maybe you know that person. Yeah.
There's a few thousand of us at Boeing.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So now that I have you on there, the speaker, who has influenced you the most in Shpe?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been thinking about this one, but I'm gonna go all the way back to again when I was a student, and he'd probably be surprised if he hears me drop his name. But his name is Cesar Orellana. He was the person who introduced me to Shpe. He was the one who saw me in a classroom with a T-shirt that said El Salvador on it, came, introduced himself, and say, "Hey, we got this group of Hispanic engineers. We meet every Tuesday, et cetera, et cetera." And then he offers me, of course, every college student's favorite words is free food. So I naturally go to the meeting, and I was just blown away because I was like, wow, there's a bunch of people that look like me, that talk like me, that sound like me, and we're all just gathered together here. And then I was sold. I've been involved with Shpe ever since.
Right. No, and I've interviewed a couple of people from the panel, and I've interviewed other individuals through Success Innovation, and every time I ask them how they fell into Shpe, the most common answer is the free food. So I laugh because that is true. It's a big hook, and it draws you in. But no, in all seriousness, as a student, you don't know a lot of stuff, but if you see something that says free food or something, that's the big marketing hook that gets you in, and then you decide to stay in there. That's another question that I'll ask all the panelists, but I want to go over to Bartholomew on who the biggest influence was for you at Shpe.
I think the great thing about Shpe is that there's a collective of different backgrounds, different groups of people, and because of that, I just think that the greatest influences have been a collective of all those. So back in when I was a student, leadership like Heidi Ariola, Barry Cordero, those leaders back then, I remember those were some of the first role models that I had at the more regional and national level. When you talk specifics now, the students that I went to school with and were a part of SHIP at the time too, we had the same struggles. So the free food, I mean, that was always a benefit, right? The Little Caesars pizza, no matter how many times we had it, it never got old. Never got old, because it was that moment for us to
You were kind of already looking forward to that meeting, right? You were like, oh yeah, I scored today.
Right, exactly. It's always going to be our hook. And it's a great hook. I mean, we bond over food, especially as Latinos. When you gather together, food, tamales, pozole, like as a Mexican American, those are the things that I look forward to the family gatherings, the food, because there's nothing else like mom's cooking. And I know in my household, that is definitely the case. But definitely, it's a collective of the different influences, and they're all from different backgrounds.
Right. No, and to a certain degree, you mentioned the breaking bread at the same table. Essentially, when you're able to break bread at the same table with other individuals, you let your guard down a little bit. You're in a more relaxed state. You're able to talk about certain things, and maybe a conversation just over food leads to something else, and then you start, sidewinding into probably a problem that you had at class or something that's going on at home, but you're with your friends in the SHIP chapter, and all of a sudden they brainstorm some idea and they give you some sort of solution that kind of guides you to, this is what I need to do, or this is good advice, I need to take it. And that's where the bonding really happens over that. It's not just the general meeting, but it's more of the social aspect of breaking food. Not that you have music and dancing, but it's more of a the conversation aspect of it. So that's really cool. That's really awesome. I want to go back and ask a question about diversity for the from the professionals that are working at Boeing and that are working at Northrop Grumman at this moment. We have SHIP on the outside, but you probably have your own Latino ERGs, employee resource groups. How do you see that, and how do you finagle? How do you compare it to SHIP? And this question goes to Leo first.
Yeah, so every company does have their employee resource groups. At Boeing, it's called Boeing Familia now. How they tie into SHIP is that they're very similar in terms of like what they're trying to achieve in terms of the development of their members. The differentiator being that, a resource group within Boeing caters to everybody who is a STEM major or a non-STEM major, including like human resources and folks in the finance section as well. The key aspect is that SHIP is a broad organization. It's able to reach different organizations and companies, and therefore offer more opportunities to students, whereas a Boeing resource group, a Boeing organization, will offer their employees these benefits only, and then every now and then be able to outreach to students, but specifically tailor only that this is Boeing, we're the best, don't talk to Northrop, and come take a look at us. Mm-hmm. But it's much more specific into one tunnel, whereas SHIP has a broader vision as to the STEM outreach that they're capable of. And of course, because of that, they have a broader network as well. Right,
correct. What about you there, Bartholomew, because you work at Northrop, and I think he threw a little jab over there.
Well, the great thing is it really is an extension to the family. I think the aspect of professional development, the leadership, those are still values that don't change. And I mean, surprisingly, and I'm not surprised at the same time, is a lot of the membership is SHIP affiliated in some way, or was SHIP affiliated at one point, which also gives credence because it's an extension to the family. We call it Adelante at Northrop Grumman. And again, it's all inclusive, not on just engineers. It's any discipline that wants to be involved, make a difference, make an impact. We've done collaborations with other organizations, Lockheed and Aerojet Rocketdyne, and the San Fernando Valley Professional Chapter. And really, it's that extension to extend the network within Northrop Grumman to the local community. That's what it's about. And we'd love to have a future event with Boeing someday.
Yeah, see, there's a collaboration, a handshake extended to you there, Leo.
We'll make it happen.
So, speaking of that, I bring this up, the ERGs within industry, because they're a good source of funding for the external ship chapters, be it professional or student wise. And with this one, I'm going to run over to Jennifer to ask the question of how do you actually reach over as a student to the industry to seek funding? How does that happen from your standpoint, Jennifer?
I think SHIP is a great network, and starting with the local professional chapter, where you have like a Bartholomew or a Leo to make those connections, is the best way to go about it, because you already are familiar with them and they can direct you to the proper channels and make it happen.
Right. Yeah. What's your opinion on that, Miguel? How do you go about it? How do you as a student chapter actually connect with the industry?
Yeah, I think it's important to keep sort of a recent graduate, sort of a database if possible. So people from your university graduate, go off in industry and become professionals. You can shoot them an email, try to get a partnership going. Like if they don't know anybody, they'll know somebody that can connect you to HR, anybody handling some form of sponsorship. But definitely any connection, go to conferences. My chapter's gotten sponsorship from companies that aren't even in the state, so they don't have to be local. I think it's just ask as many people as possible.
Right. And I think that's really key, because if you belong to an ERG within your corporation, the employee resource group, essentially, your Bartholomew mentioned it really well. A lot of SHIP members are members of the Northrop familia, or Adelante, right? What was it? Adelante, right?
Adelante.
So that ERG is connected with the SHIP professional and the SHIP chapters, and he is essentially that funnel of, I know inside of Northrop Grumman how to finagle, navigate, and bypass all those barriers. That if, for example, Jennifer reached out to just the human resources website, they wouldn't be able to help her, because they'd say, no, we're not going to fund you anything, and our fiscal year budget's already done, whatever. But within the ERG, if she knows Bartholomew, she sends him a message and says, hey, let's sit down and talk. This is what we're planning. This is what we want to do. Bartholomew brings it up to the meeting over at the ERG within the corporation. They already probably have some sort of budget, and they could say, yes, we're going to help Jennifer out. And the same goes for every student professional chapter. So I think that that's something that we're elevating ourselves as Latinos, that we have gone through SHIP, and that we are in the industry, and that we belong to an ERG within that industry. We're able to reach into the pockets of diversity and inclusion. And then we can definitely say, hey, show me the money, essentially. Put your money where your words are, and then essentially show it by affecting the actual community and supporting. And in that sense, you're branding the company, and it's not just diversity and inclusion. You're actually doing something that you're actually advocating for. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of miss the point, where what is it really? What is diversity and inclusion? It benefits the company at large within the industry, but it also benefits the individuals outside, because of that networking that they have with the professional SHIP chapter and the studentship chapter, and that network trickles up. So we go back to the point that Jennifer brought, where, lift others as you rise up. So that's essentially how we can do it. And, I see that, and I'm going to bring this up because it's been happening lately. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of things that are going on in society right now. Maybe some of it has to do with politics, and we're not here to talk about politics, but a lot of it has to do with this resentment and this pandemic that it's been going on for a while, and there's a lot of emotions that are bottled up, and things are happening. But I think we have to put a positive light to the problem, And I think as engineers, as technical individuals, as possible, industry people, we can definitely support those students that actually need it where they need it, be it through scholarship funding, be it through sponsoring for a convention where they can actually prepare through NILA or through the national convention to seek out an internship so that they can actually fund their schooling, because now they have more experience at a company and they can actually get paid for that aspect of it, and they can save up so that they can pay for their tuition or the books and whatnot. So that's essentially bringing others right, helping others rise as you're rising up. So once again, going back to the statement, as professionals, when you're within that industry, sometimes it's really hard because the industry puts roadblocks within themselves, and there's things that they want you to do, and sometimes they finagle and they argue about money, and they want, there's that budget thing that they don't think that Shpe or the organization's diversity and inclusion is essential for them. But yet they have an organization internal that advocates for that. But still, when things have to be cut, and I understand from a financial perspective of a company to make money, because ultimately, if you look at the bottom black and white, that's what they're there for, to make a profit. But yes, a lot of industry is there to help out, and they have this diversity and inclusion. And I think that's where we come in as professionals, Leo, Bartholomew, helping our chapters by giving back through our organizations internally. So that's something that I just kind of want to mention, which brings me to, when individuals actually graduate, I already mentioned some of it, but they obtain a job by using Shpe and they use it as a springboard, but they don't really return back to mentor forward. What type of mechanisms do you guys think that we could possibly implement to generate that giving back, that mentorship machine function better? And I'm going to go with Leo on this.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I'm gonna go with the answer of tools and mechanisms that we're using now. Now that we've entered like this virtual meeting reality that we're in now, we have to be able to utilize these tools to our advantage. Lots of times in the past, people thought mentorship had to be one-on-one in person, and that's not necessarily the case. What happens a lot of times, professionals, that they run out of time because now they have families, they own a house, they have other priorities outside of Shpe, so their time becomes less and less. So how do we respect that time? By minimizing the time that they have to travel one spot to another. So first, we utilize the mechanisms that we have here for virtual mentorship, which is very possible, which now that we've seen these tools actually work and can be utilized for the benefit of everyone, let's utilize them. And the second thing is to actually create a program of mentorship. There are organizations that do a great job at this, and we just have to be able to kind of piggyback off of the great things they're doing, so we can just follow us like a sequential program in terms of, hey, this is where you are in January, and in December you want to be here. Let's track a progress along the way, so that way we can see we're having the conversations that impact you and benefit you as well.
Right. And I'm going to go over to Jennifer for a little bit, because she mentioned that she's seen some students that are having problem making those meetings because they work during the day and they go to school during the evening. So they are limited in time. So piggyback off of what Leo said, is it something possible now that using Zoom meetings and using teleconferencing has become more streamlined? Do you think that this could possibly solve, to a certain extent, the engagement of those students?
Definitely. I can definitely see more attendance. And one thing that I was thinking of as Leo was speaking was that we had a panel for one of our general body meetings, and there was only one female on the panel. Oh, actually 2 females on the panel. But the more senior professional, she mentioned that, she had to run because she had a family, like you were saying, she had to squeeze us in for an hour. And I think that just having the virtual workshops will provide more of that diversity that, we want to see. And I'm very excited about that.
Right. No, and I myself, I am also limited in time. I have a family, a wife, 2 kids. I work about 40 minutes away from my house. And during this pandemic, I think the positive for me has been that I've been able to join various student chapter meetings, not in only one actual college, but also, in the professional aspect, I've been able to communicate more with the Shpe professional chapter in San Diego through those teleconferences, and also through USD. I was able to USD, which is the Catholic uh, university here in San Diego. I was present in their actual election portion that took part during the middle of the day, where I would be working, but I was able to call in and at least listen in and chime in for a couple minutes. I was part of the election process of San Diego State with Alfonso Cota and his group, and I was part of the UCSD election process. So I felt included, to put it that way. As a professional, I felt like, okay, I'm getting an insight of getting to know who the next board members, the elected board members, are going to be. I was able to congratulate them. I was able to put in a little bit of advice for them and extend my support via the telephone and via the screen at that point. So I think, Leo brought up a good point to go ahead and continue implementing this. And I think I mentioned it to some students. We should definitely bring this and continue doing it even after the pandemic ends, because that will allow more engagement from those individuals. What do you any insight there, Bartholomew? Do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I think before this whole pandemic, the norm was, let's bring the membership to the events. Now it's switched over to, let's bring the events to the membership. And this goes into with the Zoom platforms, which is great. So continuing that initiative, things perhaps, I think Facebook has this great feature of reminding us of past memories. So random pictures will come up from like 10 years ago, right? And maybe that's something, a nostalgia factor that we need at Shpe. We know what our accomplishments might have been, what those benchmark moments were, but how much more besides our memories do we have to depend on? So really, maybe even having something like a yearbook for everybody that really shows them, okay, well, this is what you lived through Shpe, and this is what you made happen here. That is another aspect. But we have signature events too, right? So the conferences, the RLDCs, the NILAs, there's regions that have extensions to those. Another one, Noche de Ciencias. Region 1 is great with Bomba Blast. When I was in their regional meeting, I was very impressed by that and how engaged their leadership is to just take that up on themselves and present that as part of as a benefit to their membership. So now we're not just waiting for RLDC or NILA. Now we have Bomba Blast, and this is one of their signature. And this is probably what Leo might have been alluding to adopting new sort of events that can create a better benchmark than what we already have today.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, Bartholomew. I'm gonna come. Can you kind of expand on what Bomba Blast is?
Sure.
I haven't heard it. It
So
sounds like fun though.
Right, it's not as dangerous as it sounds. It's actually a great benefit. So it's an extension for professional mentorship, really. So this is led by the professional chapters, and it's an opportunity, one, for the career development, career preparedness, like a corporate readiness type of event, and getting them situated to a point where, one, students are comfortable with speaking to professionals, because a lot of the time it's the thought of, well, they're professionals and I'm not, and what if I say the wrong thing? But one, getting that cultural shift and getting that cultural comfort. So Bomba Blast does that for their membership. And they also do career fairs. They host their own career fairs. They seek their own sponsorships, and they take it upon themselves as professional chapters to do this.
Okay. All right. Thank you for explaining that. What about you, Miguel? How do you see, this possible mechanism implementing new things to retain that possible generation of mentorship? As a student right now, ready to become a professional, how do you see this taking shape? What would you change?
Ooh, that's a great one. I see a lot of activity. First of all, like Avila is going to be virtual, so I expect to see a lot of more chapter leaders, both professional and student, kind of networking and engaging. But if you're talking mentorship, I would even recommend just being proactive. So if you see somebody on a panel that you like, look them up on LinkedIn, connect with them. And the cool thing now that everything's virtual, you don't need to be on the same time. You don't need to call them. Like I had a great mentor of mine where he worked at a company I really wanted to work at. So I would email him questions like four at a time. He had a family, he had a lot of priorities. So very patient, maybe take a few days or weeks, but he could respond, at his own, I guess, on his clock.
Right. That's a good point, because now through LinkedIn, and I know that all the panelists have LinkedIn account, but I don't know if all the audience attendees actually have a LinkedIn account. If you don't, I urge you to go ahead and LinkedIn account. Once again, LinkedIn, it is a social media, but its main goal is to keep it in the professional level. And by that statement, it means that you will find individuals that are professionals in what they post. And as far as students, if they're students and they have a LinkedIn account, and this goes for the high school students, community college students, university, four-year university students, get a LinkedIn account and act the way that a professional would act, because that will essentially prepare you, because you walk in the shoes as a professional and you start shaping yourself as a professional, behaving, talking, writing as a professional. Not only that, connecting with professionals. If you're interested in Microsoft, filter people from Microsoft and connect with them. When you connect with them, thank them for the connection and make sure that you seek and ask them questions, trying to connect to become their mentee. If they respond, great. If not, I urge you to practice patience and persistence. Along with that, if you want to connect with any of us that are here, I'm pretty sure, as I stated, we all have LinkedIn accounts. You're more than welcome to reach over to Leo, to Miguel, to Jennifer, to Bartholomew, to all of us, and request our connection. And I urge you not to just leave it at that, but also to be proactive, because we will accept you, but we won't necessarily seek asking you how's everything going, what's going on, because we have our own life and we have our own problems. So if you send us a request and we accept, your turn, the ball is on your court to say, thank you for accepting my invitation, X question that you want to ask of us. And then we can go back. And if we respond, go ahead, and it's a tennis match, back and forth, back and forth. So play it easy and play it that way. And that's a good point, Miguel, because, you mentioned not always being on the phone, because maybe sometimes that person has a very busy schedule. Writing an email, writing a message, writing a direct message through LinkedIn, that'll definitely help a lot, because you will definitely verbalize and articulate your question better in writing. You'll have the time to actually do it, and the person reading it on the other side will have the time to actually respond to it. And it could be a lengthy conversation, lengthy paragraph. And if something's not understood, you can say, I didn't understand this, copy paste, and exactly what they said. And you'll have it as a reference to go back to if you ever have a question on it. But also, I encourage you all to go ahead and seek that mentorship, also conversation via telephone, so that you can establish that personal human touch to it. So you can hear the voice of the other person. And even so, a little further, if you start developing that conversation, that relationship, go ahead and reach out and say, hey, can we have a face-to-face Zoom meeting? And see what they say. If they say yes, agree to a certain amount of time, and then go for that. So that's great advice. I want to ask of each one of you, what moments in Shpe were actually something that pushed you out of your comfort zone? And I'm going to start with Jennifer on this one.
let's see, so many moments.
Okay.
To the first, going into your first career fair, the one that really put me out of my comfort zone was nationals, because it's like Disneyland of career fairs, like just so many booths, and you see the lines, and like you talked about, like competition, and just that really pushed me out of my comfort zone. But also having my ship chapter, like, Jen, you got your resumes, you look professional, you got this. Those moments, it was like, okay, I could do this, like I got this. And then another moment is, the first time I had to speak in front of my chapter. I'm talking to a bunch of people, and I've never did public speaking before, like, so scary. But just remembering that ship is that safe place where you can learn these soft skills. You can learn how to be a leader, learn how to do public speaking, learn how to talk to recruiters. It's great. It's where the development happens, and you're with your friends.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for
Awesome.
sharing that. And I think if any of you have actually watched some of the Success Innovation episodes with some individuals, that we actually talk about the national convention. When we go back to that moment of you walk in and, oh my God, it's like a sea of individuals that look like you. And not only that, you see a sea of Google, Ford, Boeing, Caterpillar, General Atomics, you see Northrop Grumman there, and you're like, wow, those are companies that I have only seen on billboards. I didn't know that they were actually looking for me or for individuals that actually look like me. And then the next thing that you mentioned, Jennifer, everybody, the students are there dressed to impress. I mean, you're showered, you're shaving, you got a tie on, and
Cleaned up those pizza stains.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, but you're there ready to roll, and you have your little portfolio or little folder with your resumes, and essentially your whole dreams are in your hand at that point, and your eyes are sparkling within that convention center. What about you, Leo? What actually pushed you out of your comfort zone in ship?
What pushed me out of my comfort zone was having to talk to a recruiter for the first time. I had no idea what I was doing, and I got through it because the very first recruiter I spoke to, I bombed. If there was a definition of bombing your first impression, I completely blew it there. And then I remember that at my first convention, I was able to land an interview with Johnson & Johnson. And I'm like, yay, I got an interview, but I had no idea how to interview either. So on top of finally learning how to speak to a recruiter, now I'm being pushed into an interview that I have no idea like what I'm doing or how to prepare for it or anything. And I went in kind of just blind. It was a terrible interview, needless to say. At the end of it, it was kind of like, thank you. And I kind of walked out like, yeah, I'm not going to get that offer. But it was good because essentially it was a huge failure. It was a failure of epic proportions. But I learned from it. Like immediately after that, I went to go speak to my peers, other members of my chapter at that time. I was like, hey, I just had this interview, man, and I completely bombed it, man. I don't know what I was doing. Oh my God, I don't know how to handle this. But I learned from it. So that was a positive aspect. But that was one that really just like pushed me over the edge.
What about you, Miguel? What was that moment in ship that actually pushed you out of your comfort zone?
It was definitely being on the national board for the first meeting. It was very intimidating to have the founder of Ship, to have the CEO, deans of universities, and all these diverse groups of people that have 20 times more experience than me. That was definitely getting me out of my comfort zone, where I needed to definitely come extremely prepared and really be on top of everything for the future meetings. So yeah, it was more of seeing those people and working with them.
Okay, meeting looking at those individuals, and they essentially, to a certain extent, became your role models. models to follow, to emulate, essentially. What about you, Bartholomew? What is the ship moments that have actually pushed you out of your comfort zone?
I'd say the post interview aspect with it, which is the following up, the sending emails and messages. So for LinkedIn example, I remember my first messages reaching out to recruiters and the hiring managers. They weren't the greatest. They were very uncomfortable. I know I read them over for like at least 5 times, 10 minutes. And thinking back now, I'm grateful to have just even attempted it, because now when I receive messages from other people, now I can see that, well, they're coming from a point where they're taking responsibility for their own career and their own aspirations. And that's something to be proud of. The thing, I seek uncomfortable situations now, and I'm comfortable with uncertainty. I'm comfortable with complexity. And because of that, I think I can appreciate the being uncomfortable as a student. It really brought me to this point and these points. But it might seem simple, but I think when we frame the problems a certain way, then it just makes it much easier to go through. I know when I was president back in my student chapter at CSUN, rebuilding a chapter was extremely uncomfortable because seeking funding was part of that structuring. We had to start off from the associated students, and from there, when they have budget. But now the question of why would they give me money to fund my club? That was the question I knew I was repeating myself, but we had purpose and we got funding, and it was just getting over that discomfort to obtain what we needed. And then proceeding to the regional level when we started connecting with other student chapters and other professionals. But really, so I think that would have probably been another key point with restructuring and reviving a student chapter.
Right. So here's the thing where I think you did a great job on that. But you know, I think, and I'm stumbling here because I'm going through a similar situation where I'm trying to establish an ERG, employee resource group, within the corporation that I work at. But some individuals see it as a club. I want it to be a living organization. And I don't want people to think that this organization is a club, because a club is social gathering only, essentially. But I want it to be an organization that actually helps and supports individuals within the corporation and outside the corporation, not in just the networking and social aspect, but also in the leadership development process. And also helping, once again, going back to what Jennifer said, and this is why I keep going back to it, because you have to lift others as you come, as you're moving forward, you know, as you're going up, you have to lift those people. And I ran into an individual recently where the conversation was like, hey, you know, I didn't really know about SHIP, and I didn't know how to take advantage of it when I was at the college university level, but I definitely want to participate in the professional chapter. How do I do that? And I was like, okay, well, you know, first off, you're within this organization, within this corporation, within this industry. I'm starting to go ahead and develop this new ERG, employee resource group. Why don't you go ahead and help me out with it? And at the in the same time, we will be able to help the external organization. But I help out and I belong to the external SHIP chapter. So I jump back and forth in that aspect. And I know that Bartholomew and Leo, you guys do the same thing. You're part of your internal ERG, but you're also very active in your in external SHIP chapters respectively. And that is what you have to be, a leader within that corporation and outside of that corporation. You have to be a role model 24/7, essentially, because, you know, in LinkedIn, you can put something or you can say something and you never know who's going to be looking at you. And you have to be who you are at all times. And if you're advocating for diversity and inclusion, you have to be mindful, and this goes for everybody, you know, not just Latinos, but you have to be mindful of all aspects of gender, all aspects of races, and make sure that you're advocating for all of that diversity and inclusion. That is something, once again, it's also very hard because we all, regardless of who we are, we have those biases, unconscious biases. And because we grew up in a portion, in a sector of society, and then we have this type of bias, but we have to erase that from our mind to a certain extent and make sure that we're all inclusive. You can't judge everybody with the same type of token just because somebody's white, they're this way or that way, or because somebody's African American that they have this preconception or whatnot. I'm not putting any negative spin on it. I'm just saying, as a person, we have to make sure that we do the right thing to also ourselves be diverse and inclusive of those other things that are different from us. But we also have to advocate and represent what we want, because the way we show ourselves is the way that other people's will definitely see us. With that being said, do you guys have any other things that I possibly missed talking about before I ask you the last question and open it up for questions and answers?
I think I have something.
Yes.
Just going back to connecting through LinkedIn or emailing, reaching out to the people that speak. I know I asked speakers, like, how many students actually reached out to you? 0. So just everyone, please, fireworks happening, sorry. Please reach out to your speakers, whoever goes to your school, and if you know their name beforehand, connect with them through LinkedIn. Like, don't be afraid to do that.
That is correct. That is correct. Anybody else?
I think the theme that I kept hearing was "Lift as you rise." Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah.
It really sets the stage for everything that Shpe wants to do, and I hope that the ERG that you're trying to establish actually happens, because those are the types of resources that we need. We really do. I think even if you need help externally of maybe how to go about it, you have Leo and myself available that have and seen a functioning ERG groups. So we're available to you as well.
Right. Thank you for that collaboration and extension of support there. If anybody else, if Miguel or Leo, do you have anything else before I ask you this last question? Okay. All right. So this is the last question, and then we'll open it up to Q&As. What advice would you actually give a non-Shpe member on the fence of wanting to join Shpe? And Leo?
For me, what would I tell them? I'd say, hey, come and meet one of the biggest networks of Hispanics in STEM that you're ever going to meet. Case in point, you'll meet people from all kinds of backgrounds all over the country, similar, same struggles that you may have had, and who've overcame them and who can help guide you to get where you want to go. And at the same time, you can also turn around and give that same guidance to somebody else. Overall, it is the most powerful network I have made in my life.
Thank you. That's a wonderful statement. What about you, Jennifer?
We have free pizza. No, I'm just kidding.
And there we go. The hook again.
Oh, yes, definitely mention
follow it up with lift others as you rise.
Yes.
Yes. No, go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, definitely the free pizza would be the hook, and then just, you're gonna love it. You're gonna build yourself professionally, personally. You're gonna make lifelong friends, and yes, do it.
Thank you. Just do it. Okay. What about you, Miguel Angel?
I would say just attend something. What do you got to lose? Whether it's an event, but I would more push them towards a conference. They might say, well, what about the price? And typically I tell them, if you're not spending on your own growth, then what else would you be spending that money on?
I could pay for a couple years of Netflix with that money. So
exactly. I wouldn't see it as a cost, more of an investment on yourself, your growth, and the experience.
right. Yes. Good. What about you, Bartholomew?
I think it goes back to having a platform that has resources, not just potential career opportunities, but also a network, also growth. I think just by listening, we can really understand anybody that's on the fence, what it is that they're looking for. And by listening, we can then cater our responses. And if they are looking for employment, well, great. Shpe has several career opportunities through career fairs and through these sort of networking events, and this is how you want to position yourself. And if that's something you're looking for, well, Shpe is probably for you. The membership fee, it's very low. It's maybe even something that the chapter might even be willing to sponsor. It's worth asking. But signature events, Zoom events, introducing them to those panels like this, having them engaged and listen to what it is that our experiences are like, because it's oftentimes their experiences are the experiences that we have gone through or will go through, and it's worth sharing. Lift as you rise, and really, if we have to share a box of pizza, let's do it.
Right, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that, Bartholomew. Okay, so with that, thank you. I want to thank all the panelists for actually, spending about an hour and 10 minutes with us, answering some of those interesting questions about engagement and what Shpe has actually done for them. Right now, we're going to open the actual forum over to Q&As. If anybody has a question, please press the space bar in your device or turn on your microphone. And after you're done asking the question, please remember to turn off your microphone so that there's no echo feedback. And so anybody has any questions, we're going to go for about 10 minutes. If anybody has any questions of any of the panelists or any of the topics that we actually talked about. And this is your opportunity to practice that, connecting, that networking, public speaking in a safe environment, because we are here not to judge, but to answer your questions and to mentor you to a certain degree.
I have a question. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Melissa.
Hi. So let me see if I can turn on my camera. Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet you guys. Thank you for all the questions that you gave the panelists. It was really helpful and interesting to hear the responses.
Thank you for joining us.
So I graduated as an aerospace engineering student in May last year. So I'm a year into my professional career. And I was wondering, for all the professionals, what advice would you give someone who's only been a year to look for another job, say, within the same industry, but still a little different than what you are doing right now?
No, I'll take a crack at it. Advice for, especially if you only had 1 year of experience, just know that if you're looking for a new job, companies will still look at you as an entry-level candidate. So that's exactly the kind of job you're gonna have to look for in terms of like having zero experience in terms of what you're looking for. There's an unwritten rule, especially in the aerospace industry, that you want to have at minimum 2 years before you look to transfer anywhere else. Because after 2 years is typically when you would get promoted from a level 1 to a level 2. And so that's a good opportunity to move forward in your career, because that's when you can make a jump from either within that company to another or like sector in that company, or to another company like completely different. But that's a good opportunity to make the jump, because not only can you change, you can also get promoted along with it. So it'll be kind of a little bit of a bonus for you if you wait that year out.
So going to your question too, I transitioned out of my first role a year and a half. And after that, I went to Northrop Grumman. But it's really came to my network coming through with that opportunity. So what I did was filter through the Northrop requisitions, and I asked him about it, if he knew anybody that might be hiring for that role. either the recruiter or hiring manager. And it came down that it was actually the same department that he works for. And because of that, it just made it a little easier. Okay, so now I have somebody that can speak on my behalf because they know what my work ethic is like. So I would suggest too is look through the requisitions and look through your network to see who's working there and can actually maybe even present your resume and give you a leading to that opportunity that you're looking for.
Okay.
Thank you for the question, Melissa.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Justin.
So this is more for Miguel and Jennifer in that aspect area. So many of the student chapters are more familiarized with like president, vice president within their chapter board, but like getting out of that comfort zone to get you ready for like to become like RSR or serving in these regional positions and national positions. How did that, like, what in yourself told you that you're ready for this role along those lines?
I can go for that one. Last year at the national convention, I attended Future Leaders of Shpe, and I was a vice president external at the time, right? And I was contemplating, should I run for president? Should I run for, RSR? And then I heard about this national role, and I met the people in the position, and they kind of talked to me about what they do and the previous experience that they've had. I would say talk to those people in the role, because what I was going through my head, I was like, ooh, I've never been an RSR. Should I run for national? Am I qualified for this? But the person I actually talked to was never an RSR. He was actually just like me. He jumped from chapter to the national role and gave me great advice. And it's a little bit of a leap. Like, I'm not sure if you're ever really going to know 100%, but sometimes you really got to bet on yourself, believe in yourself, and hope for the best.
Okay, thank you. What about you, Jennifer? Any response on that?
So the first time I ran, it was because of other students in other chapters. When I started, I was at community college, and we were just kind of scrambling to get our chapter together, but which meant we had a lot of contact with the RSR at the time. It was Angelica. She's great. And she, when the time came, she was the one who told me, like, you should do it. And other students that I had met encouraged me. So like my network really encouraged me to pursue a leadership position. They saw that, I had this passion. I really cared about my members. And also thinking about your why. When you think about, should I do this? Should I run for this position? I know it's going to be a big commitment. Always thinking about, what is my why? What is my bottom line? And for me, it's to empower the Hispanic community to go into STEM, which aligns with the Shpe mission. And every kind of position I take on, I always have that in my mind. And that's, you can't go wrong with that.
Right. Thank you for that response.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions there from the audience?
I have a question.
So who was that? Ellie or Margaret? Margaret, you had a question, right? Oh, Alfonso, you have a question.
Oh, somebody else talked about, I don't know if somebody else had said something about. So with all this, during this pandemic and, all these virtual events that are going on and everything, what are you guys' expectations for the upcoming Shpe events like NILA and everything that's planned to be online?
So it's definitely going to be different, but I think we've adjusted to this point where classroom settings were held on Zoom. It was a different form of engagement, but we found professors did it well. There were some professors that could have used different techniques to engage us a little better. I know at UC San Diego, there were certain instances that I wish I was more engaged, and because one, that's how you capture information. But I think from a preparedness standpoint for what Shpe has coming up, I think we're set up in a way that we can execute pretty well. The student chapters have been phenomenal about hosting their own events, and they've been social, they've been on the professional side, and really, I think we're ready.
Right. Thank you, Bartholomew. Anybody else from the panel want to respond to that question?
No, I'm just going to say that in being involved with some of the preparation that's going on with NELA, I can say it's a great opportunity for expansion. You know, we can outreach to members who otherwise probably couldn't attend, whether it was a financial burden, a travel burden, a time burden. But now we can access a lot more people and a lot more chapters, and hopefully we'll get the opportunity to expand and see growth both on the leadership level for the individual, and because their growth is there, we'll see chapter level growth as well. So overall, I see it as a great opportunity.
Right, and I think, you know, this actual panel that we're doing right now, it's kind of like a foreshadowing of what we will actually be seeing in at that type of Shpe forum with the national convention, to a certain extent, with the lectures, with the different panels that they have. With NELA, you will have the leadership development conversations in this type of format, so that will definitely be something that you can benefit from. And picking off what Leo was saying, you can actually reach a lot more people, and some students from different chapters that possibly wanted to go, but because of financial reasons could not attend, then now they at least have the opportunity to virtually attend those meetings. And I'm not just saying this particular year, I'm saying possibly extended to years ahead, where you actually have the conventions in person once again, and everything kind of goes back to normal. You can actually go ahead and implement this virtual forum so that others can actually take advantage and benefit from who haven't actually attended. Thank you, Alfonso. Thank you to the panelists. Do you have any other additional response to Alfonso's question? If
We
not,
actually,
I think, yes, Miguel.
yeah, we just hit over 13,000 members. So that's historic. I mean, we're growing at a crazy amount. I hope that keeps up with the virtual, but especially at NELA, more chapter leaders are going to be trained. And something I'd actually like to see is things recorded. So if you ever want to go back to information that you've heard, that will be available. You know, one big thing about conferences, you hear it and then you go home and then you might forget it. You might lose all the paper you wrote, and it's kind of, you're left with the feeling that you had in a few words. But hopefully, you know, if you have something recorded and you can keep going back, then that'll be, I guess, there forever.
Right. Yes. What about you, Jennifer? Any comments on that?
We don't have to worry about fire code.
That is true. That is true.
And you know, like running to like whichever workshop you want to go see the most, like, and maybe you can just watch the recorded version if it's going on at the same time. So definitely some benefits.
That is benefit, yes. And thank you all the panelists for answering that. I think Margaret had a question. Margaret's a high school student, and she's at Hilltop in Chula Vista. It is one of the chapters, the junior chapters, that I helped start a couple years back. And so she's the incoming president of 2020 to 2021 school year. Margaret, I think you had a question. If not, I apologize for that spot.
Yes, I did have a question.
Okay.
So this is going towards everyone. I was wondering what the high school version of you, whether it was a freshman or would have liked to have known or heard about Shpe to almost push you to joining Shpe.
Oh my goodness. I'll go first. High school Jenny wanted to be an artist. She did not like calculus. No. So to know that you can still be creative and you can still problem solve and use your imagination as an engineer would have been so life-changing to know in high school. I wouldn't have gone through the route of what not to do, but also enforcing, you know, my decision. So I don't regret my path, but Jenny at high school would have really benefited from hearing the type of projects that engineers work on in real life, where calculus it does kind of matter sometimes.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you. Anybody else want to take a stab at what they would advise a freshman in high school? What Shpe is all about?
All right, I'll go for it. In high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life because I had no idea what was really out there. I would have loved to know what engineering was. What is STEM? What is mechanical engineering, biomedical engineering, civil? What are all these different professions that you get to design stuff, that you get to make some really cool inventions and design cool things? And also, what is it that you should be doing now to help prepare you to get there? It wasn't until my end of my first year, early second year in community college when I finally realized, wait, I want to be an engineer. So that's when I started really acting appropriately in terms of studying, taking the right classes and everything. How much further could I have been had I started doing all that in my freshman, sophomore year in high school, you know? I think if you're in high school and you're already aware and you're involved in Shpe now and you get exposure to professionals and students who are already on track, you're ahead of the game. You're going to be way, way above me by the time you get to like my age. So, yeah, I wish I would have known all that.
No, and kind of to interject and to piggyback off of what Leo said before the other panelists kind of answer the question. Going back to when I was entering school at UCSD, I went directly from high school to a four-year university, and I didn't really know too much about engineering, and I went in undeclared, which is kind of now unheard of in a lot of colleges. So going back to my freshman year, I didn't know what an SAT was. I didn't know that I had to take the PSAT. I didn't know anything about financial aid whatsoever, or how to even apply to a four-year university. Or, that was something that I wish I would have known. And this question's key because Margaret and I had been talking about this a couple of weeks back, and we're getting ready to promote Shpe at the local high school entering freshman class to start hooking them in. So I think part of what Jennifer said, the marketing technique is free food. That Little Caesar's pizza is going to help them come in. And then paying off of, what Leo was saying, telling them about what engineering is in a grand scheme of things, as far as all the engineering aspects of it. And what Jennifer was saying, you could be very creative with engineering in all the branches of engineering. So I think that's really good advice. Anything from Bartholomew or Miguel on that aspect that Margaret asked?
I think the word engineering in itself would have been nice to know. It wasn't until sophomore year at CSUN that I really understood or found out what it was. I would have definitely taken the SATs more seriously. I scored somewhere like 1100 for my SATs, and I know I could have done way better. I was very good at math. I was very good at science. I was just lazy. So I just saw the SAT as a chore. I think had I known engineering was a path, I would have definitely gone out of my way to prepare more. So it's great that as a high school student, you're already involved to the network, because you'll find yourself having new role models because of it too, and things that you might want to aspire to as an engineer or STEM professional, and those are great.
Right. Thank you, Bartholomew. What about you, Miguel?
Yeah, for me in high school, I always liked computers, although I didn't know anything much about them. And for a little bit of time, similar to Jennifer, I wanted to be like an actor. I wanted to be a writer. And then I heard about kind of what an actual engineer does, although it would have been nice to have actual engineers to ask questions to. All I could have was like a Google search of, what do all these billion types of engineers do? But honestly, if I could go back, studying more, taking education as seriously as possible was definitely one big takeaway. I only took school seriously until my third year of high school, when I knew, I was like, ooh, if I want to do engineering, I better really start taking this seriously. But if I could really double down and actually have met engineers, I'm not sure, how things would have played out, but it would have been better.
Yes, Definitely, definitely. Any other questions? I think the person last name Diaz had a question.
Hi, thank you for the information. It's really helpful. If I may, I have two questions, but the first one
Of course,
is,
go ahead.
I graduated last year, and I started in this company as I navigate, I guess, early career development. My question is, as I seek mentorship, what can I offer? How do I make sure that the relationship is mutually beneficial and it's not just about me?
You can go first. I have to call off after this.
Okay.
But I would say just asking is the first step. Making sure that you make your intentions clear. If you have questions that you already have in mind, present those. Because I know I appreciate the mentees that I have, that they already have their questions in line. So it makes the dialogue go much easier, and I understand how to help them. So just by that, having that preparedness already, you're already giving value, because you're not making us think extra on how we can help you if you really don't know what you need to be helped with. But it sounds like you already have an understanding of what you need help with, which is great. So use that and ask away. But Lazaro, thank you very much. Thank you everybody that called in. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Bartholomew. Thank you so much. Thank you for the time that you allowed us to talk.
Thank you.
So what was your second question there, Ellie?
So the second one is kind of based off the first one, the first question that was asked in the very beginning. And I'm in a certain role in my company, but I don't really want to be in this role for much longer. However, I don't have experience in the role that I want to go into. And so I'm not sure how to gain that experience now that I'm out of school. And maybe you guys can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, great question. The thing I would say is to start finding out how you can get your foot in the door there into the position you want. So just to give you an example, when I started my career, I'm a structural design engineer. So I was just designing my life away on CAD. Then one day the opportunity comes to be a mechanical liaison engineer, which is just a fancy term for manufacturing engineering in the satellite industry. Hey, Leo, there's this opportunity. You want to do it? All right, sure. Sign me up, coach. I dove in and I really had no idea what I was doing. But before there was about a 2-week transition period. But in that time, I started asking people who had done that role before, like, hey, what's it like? Any small thing I can get started on? And that's the key thing right there. Start asking people who are in that position already and see how they got there, and then figure out what you need to do to get there. They might just tell you, hey, you know what? I'm doing research on this little thing. If you want to start taking a look at it, start taking a look at it. And honestly, a lot of that work might be on your own time, but that's part of the work you're going to have to put in if you want to, make progress in the direction you're trying to get to.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Miguel and Jennifer, do you guys have anything to add to that? Even, any advice for LEDs?
I think just going back to your network, definitely using LinkedIn, searching for the people that work there that are part of your network or mutual connections that maybe you can get connected that way. And you can ask directly, like, how did you get those skills? Just really leaning in on the network would be my advice.
My comment would be more on the first one, to have a mentor be beneficial. I feel like actually putting a label on it is very, very big as well, to where asking, can you be my mentor? For example, when somebody actually referred to me as a mentor, it was kind of a shock. And I started taking it a lot more seriously. I started checking in, and it wasn't more one-sided. Now, if there's a title and both sides, both people are learning and engaged.
Okay, awesome. That's a good response there. Thank you there, Miguel. That's a good value added. With that, for the sake of time, I know that we are all busy, and the conversation has been really great. I appreciate and want to acknowledge Leo, Jennifer, Miguel, and Bartholomew, obviously, for your time, for the dedication that you have shown Shpe, for everything that you have done, for your time answering the questions, for answering the questions of the audience here. I want to also acknowledge Alfonso Cota for helping us, for helping me with Success Innovation here. And I want to thank all the individuals that actually signed in for the audience and listened through the whole thing and were able to ask questions. The high school students that joined us, the community college students, the four-year university students, because this is the way you learn. This is the way you obtain experience, by looking, by seeking, by understanding who the leaders are and how they actually obtain those skills. I encourage you and urge you to go ahead and connect with each and every one of us via LinkedIn. Send us a note, send us a request to go ahead and be part of your network. And going back to what Jennifer said, lift others as you're moving up. That seems to be the theme here. And also, along with that, I want to thank everybody for listening and for being part of this project called Success Innovation. Thank you so much for the loyal listeners, for the loyal audience. This has been another wonderful episode. This was a live session with questions and answers with a wonderful panel of Jennifer de Avila, Leo Soto, Miguel Cuen, and Bartholomew Perez. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. This is Lázaro Herrera signing out. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for your time here. Thank you for watching another wonderful episode. This particular episode was a live panel session with 4 wonderful individuals. I want to thank Bartholomew Perez, Jennifer de Avila, Miguel Cuen, and Leo Soto for participating in this live session conversation, which included deep conversations about engagement and how to better help and manage the student chapters as well as the professional chapters. Thank you so much to the live audience that was able to attend and ask questions at the very end. I hope you enjoyed this wonderful episode. See you next time. Lázaro Herrera for Success Innovation. Bye-bye.